Black marriages in the 1940s were not just unions. They were fortresses built on traditions today's generation has never seen. What kept couples together went far deeper than love alone. Here are 25 secrets from the 1940s that Black people who lived through this era will never forget. Seeing marriage announcements read from the pulpit for weeks before the wedding was how Black communities in the 1940s celebrated unions before they even happened. Preachers would stand before the congregation and announce that Brother Johnson intended to marry Sister Williams, giving the community time to offer blessings, advice, and wisdom. These announcements were not just formalities. They were public declarations that brought families together and made the marriage a community event. Young couples knew their commitment was witnessed by everyone who mattered, and that knowledge carried weight. The weeks leading up to the wedding became a time of preparation for the entire church family. Elders would pull the groom aside after service to share wisdom about providing for a family. Older women would visit the bride to teach her recipes and household skills. By the wedding day, the couple had been wrapped in a network of support that would follow them for decades. Courting on front porches under the watchful eyes of parents and neighbors was the foundation of Black romance in the 1940s. Young men who wanted to pursue a young woman had to sit on her family's porch in plain view of everyone, their intentions clear and their behavior impeccable. There was no sneaking around, no secret meetings, and no rushing into anything physical. The porch became a testing ground where character was revealed through conversation, patience, and respect. Parents observed how a young man treated their daughter and whether he showed up when he said he would. Neighbors noticed too, and word traveled fast if someone acted out of line. This public courtship built trust between families before any wedding was discussed. Young women learned to expect respect because they had never known anything else. Young men understood that earning a woman's hand meant earning her family's approval first. The front porch was where marriages began with accountability and intention. Wearing matching outfits and Sunday best as signs of marital pride was a tradition Black couples in the 1940s took seriously. Husbands and wives coordinated their clothing for church and community events, showing the world they belonged to each other. It was not about vanity, it was about presenting a united front and honoring the institution of marriage. A well-dressed couple walking into church together made a statement about their home and their commitment. Wives spent hours pressing their husbands' suits to make sure every detail was perfect. Husbands made sure their wives had the best dresses they could afford, even if it meant sacrificing other things. The attention to appearance reflected the attention they gave their marriage. Looking good together meant they were doing well together, and the community recognized those signals. For Black couples navigating a world that often denied them dignity, dressing with pride was an act of resistance and love. Having extended family living under one roof was not unusual for Black couples in the 1940s. It was expected as a source of strength. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins often shared homes with newlyweds, creating households where young marriages were surrounded by wisdom. When disagreements arose between husband and wife, elders nearby had seen it all before and could offer perspective. When money was tight, the burden was shared. Young wives learned to run a household by watching their mothers and grandmothers work together in the same kitchen. Young husbands saw daily examples of how men were meant to treat their families. This communal living meant no couple was ever truly isolated in their struggles. Privacy was limited, but so was the loneliness that can destroy marriages. Children grew up with multiple generations teaching them what commitment looked like. The extended family was not an intrusion. It was scaffolding that held young marriages together. The Wives Savings Club at church was a tradition that helped young Black couples build their futures in the 1940s. Women gathered weekly, each contributing small amounts that would be given to one member on a rotating basis. These clubs provided financial stability that banks often denied Black families. Wives used savings to furnish homes, buy necessities, and create emergency funds that protected their marriages from disaster. The clubs were also places where women shared advice about managing households and supporting husbands through difficult times. Older women mentored younger ones, passing down wisdom that had kept their own marriages intact for decades. The discipline of saving together taught wives financial skills that benefited entire families. Husbands trusted their wives with money because they saw the results firsthand. The Savings Club was more than economics. It was sisterhood, education, and a safety net woven by women who understood that strong marriages needed strong foundations. Husbands walking their wives to work every morning was a sign of devotion that Black couples in the 1940s understood deeply. Many Black women worked as domestics in white households, leaving before dawn and returning after dark. Their husbands would rise early to walk them to the bus stop or all the way to their employer's door, ensuring their safety in a world that often treated Black women with cruelty. This daily ritual was about more than protection. It was a husband's way of saying that his wife's labor mattered and that her dignity deserved to be guarded. The walks gave couples time to talk, to plan, and to stay connected despite exhausting work schedules. Neighbors who saw these couples walking together every morning knew they were witnessing something sacred. The husband who showed up rain or shine proved his reliability in ways that speeches and promises never could. These morning walks built trust and reminded both partners that marriage was something you did every single day. Sharing meals with neighbors was a practice that strengthened Black marriages in the 1940s by weaving couples into their communities. Sunday dinners often included extended family and neighbors who brought dishes to share, turning meals into celebrations of abundance. These gatherings created accountability because couples knew their neighbors were paying attention to how they treated each other. A husband who was kind at the dinner table was likely kind at home. A wife who spoke respectfully of her husband in front of guests was honoring her marriage publicly. The shared meals also reduced the isolation that can poison relationships. Couples saw other marriages up close, learning what worked and what did not. They borrowed recipes, shared stories, and built friendships that provided support during hard times. The dinner table became a classroom where younger couples observed how elders interacted after decades together. Breaking bread was never just about food. It was about building bonds that made the whole community stronger. The unwritten rule that married couples never aired grievances publicly was taken seriously in Black communities during the 1940s. This rule was a commitment to privacy. What happened between a husband and wife stayed between them, and anyone who violated this code faced judgment. This was not about hiding abuse or pretending problems did not exist. It was about protecting the dignity of the marriage and working through issues privately before involving outsiders. Couples understood that once you started complaining about your spouse to others, you invited opinions that could do more harm than good. Wives talked to their mothers or trusted church sisters only when they truly needed guidance. Husbands sought counsel from elders who could help them see their own failures rather than just validating frustrations. This commitment to privacy created space for forgiveness and growth that public airing would have destroyed. Marriages survived conflicts that might have ended them if everyone in town had known every detail. The marriage bed was a sacred space with handmade quilts from mothers, a tradition that carried deep meaning for Black couples in the 1940s. When a daughter married, her mother or grandmother would present her with a quilt made specifically for her marriage bed. These quilts were not just coverings. They were blessings stitched with prayers, hopes, and wisdom. Every patch told a story, and the hands that made them had smoothed blankets over children, nursed the sick, and held husbands through grief. Brides understood they were being wrapped in their family's love every night. The quilt represented the continuity of generations and the expectation that this new marriage would add to that legacy. Husbands respected these quilts because they knew what they meant. The bed covered by that handmade blanket was where children would be conceived, where whispered conversations would happen, and where the intimacy of marriage would unfold. That sacred space was protected by the love sewn into every thread. That's it. Wives who worked domestic jobs while funding their husbands' dreams were a reality that defined many Black marriages in the 1940s. Women spent long hours cooking, cleaning, and caring for white families so their husbands could pursue education, start businesses, or save for homes. This was not resentment or sacrifice alone. It was partnership in its truest form. These wives believed in their husband's potential and invested their labor into making that potential real. Husbands who received this support understood the weight of what their wives were doing and worked twice as hard to honor that investment. Many Black professionals of that era owed their success to wives who had scrubbed floors for years while their husbands studied or saved. The arrangement required trust, communication, and a shared vision of a future that would benefit both. When success finally came, it belonged to the marriage, not just the husband. These wives were not behind their husbands. They were beside them every step of the way. Church mothers pulling newlywed brides aside after service was a tradition that saved countless Black marriages in the 1940s. These older women, who had been married for decades, took it upon themselves to mentor young wives, teaching them things their own mothers might not have shared. They spoke frankly about patience, about picking battles wisely, and about the importance of keeping romance alive even when life got hard. The conversations happened in church kitchens, on walks home, and during visits that seemed casual but were actually intentional. Church mothers knew that young brides often entered marriage with unrealistic expectations, and they gently corrected those notions before disappointment could set in. They also watched for signs of trouble, stepping in with advice before small problems became big ones. For young wives who had lost their own mothers, these church women became surrogate guides through the challenges of married life. Their wisdom was hard-earned and freely given to any bride willing to listen and learn. Husbands bringing home every paycheck unopened and handing it to their wives was a display of trust that defined Black marriages in the 1940s. Men worked long hours in difficult jobs, but when payday came, they walked straight home and placed that envelope in their wife's hands without taking a dollar for themselves first. This was not about women controlling the money. It was about men demonstrating that their labor was for the family, not for personal pleasures or vices. Wives managed household budgets with skill, stretching every cent to cover rent, food, clothing, and savings. Husbands trusted their wives completely with financial decisions because they had seen their mothers do the same thing. This arrangement required communication about needs and priorities, forcing couples to talk about money regularly rather than avoiding the subject. The unopened paycheck was a symbol of partnership, where both roles were equally valued. For Black families building wealth against tremendous odds, this trust was the foundation of everything. The prayer closet or corner, where couples knelt together every morning, was a sacred practice in Black homes during the 1940s. Before the day began, before work, chores, or children's needs took over, husbands and wives would kneel side by side and pray. They prayed for strength, for provision, for patience with each other, and for protection over their family. This daily ritual kept couples spiritually connected even when everything else pulled them in different directions. The prayer time was not long, but it was consistent, creating a rhythm that anchored the marriage in something larger than themselves. Disagreements from the night before were often resolved during morning prayer, as pride melted in the presence of shared faith. Children who witnessed their parents praying together learned that marriage was a spiritual commitment, not just a legal one. The prayer corner might have been just a worn spot on the floor, but it was where marriages were strengthened, one morning at a time. Writing letters to each other during separations was how Black couples in the 1940s kept their marriages strong across distance. Many husbands traveled for work, whether following agricultural seasons, working on railroads, or seeking employment in northern cities, while families remained in the South. Wives would write detailed letters about the children, the garden, the neighbors, and always end with words of love and longing. Husbands would respond with news of their work, money they were sending home, and promises to return soon. These letters were treasured and saved, sometimes read multiple times before the next one arrived. The act of writing forced couples to express feelings they might not say face to face, deepening emotional intimacy across miles. Some couples kept their letters for years, tying them with ribbon and storing them in special boxes. For marriages tested by economic necessity and forced separation, those letters became lifelines that kept love alive until reunions could happen. The rule about never going to bed angry was taken literally in Black households in the 1940s. Couples understood that letting resentment fester overnight allowed it to grow roots that became harder to pull out. No matter how tired they were or how heated the argument had been, they stayed up talking until some resolution was reached. This might mean one person apologizing, both agreeing to see the other's perspective, or simply deciding to let the issue go. The practice required humility and a willingness to prioritize the marriage over being right. Wives learned this rule from their mothers, and husbands were taught it by their fathers as essential wisdom for any man who wanted to stay married. The bedroom was meant to be a place of peace and intimacy, not a battlefield where yesterday's wounds were carried. By morning, the issue was settled, and the couple could face a new day together without the weight of unresolved conflict dragging them down. Wives keeping hope chests filled with treasures for their marriages was a tradition that began long before the wedding day. Young women started collecting linens, dishes, and household items as teenagers, carefully storing them in wooden chests that would one day furnish their married homes. By the time they wed, these hope chests contained everything needed to start housekeeping. The items were often handmade or purchased one piece at a time over years of saving. Mothers and grandmothers contributed pieces as well, adding embroidered pillowcases, crocheted doilies, and family heirlooms to the collection. The hope chest represented years of anticipation and preparation for married life. Opening it after the wedding was like unwrapping a lifetime of dreams. For Black women who often started married life with limited resources, these carefully gathered treasures made new homes feel established from the very first day. The chest itself became a piece of furniture that followed couples through decades of marriage. Renewing commitments on wedding anniversaries reminded Black families in the 1940s why they had chosen each other. Anniversaries were not just marked with cards or dinners. They were occasions for husbands and wives to speak their vows again, sometimes privately and sometimes before family and church. The renewal was especially meaningful after difficult years, acknowledging that staying together had been a choice made repeatedly. Wives would wear their wedding dresses if they still fit, or their Sunday best if they did not. Husbands would dress as formally as they had on their wedding day. Renewal and choice were both acts of devotion. The ceremony reminded children that their parents' marriage was something worth celebrating and protecting. Neighbors and church members who attended these renewals saw models of lasting commitment that inspired their own marriages. Each anniversary became a milestone that proved the marriage was worth the investment of another year, building confidence that carried couples through whatever challenges lay ahead. Sunday dinners were the non-negotiable gathering for married couples and their families. This tradition anchored Black marriages in the 1940s. No matter what happened during the week, no matter what disagreements occurred, the family sat down together after church for a meal that took hours to prepare and even longer to enjoy. The wife's cooking was a gift to her family, and the husband's presence at the head of the table made his commitment visible. Children learned table manners, conversation skills, and the importance of family unity during these meals. Extended family often joined, turning Sunday dinner into a weekly reunion that strengthened bonds across generations. The meal itself was special, featuring dishes that required more effort than weekday cooking allowed. For couples navigating the demands of work and children, Sunday dinner was protected time when the marriage and family came first. The tradition created memories that children carried into their own marriages. The husband's chair that no one else dared sit in was a symbol of respect in Black homes in the 1940s. Every household had one chair, usually at the head of the dinner table or in the best spot in the living room, that belonged to the man of the house. Children knew without being told that this chair was off limits, and even guests understood the unspoken rule. The chair represented the husband's place in the family structure, his role as provider and protector, honored through this simple tradition. When he came home from work, that chair was waiting for him, a small acknowledgement of his labor and sacrifice. Wives ensured the chair stayed in good condition, sometimes reupholstering it themselves when the fabric wore thin. The tradition taught children about respect for their father and for the institution of marriage itself. For husbands who worked exhausting jobs in a world that often denied them dignity, coming home to that reserved chair meant everything. Dancing together at juke joints and house parties kept romance alive for Black couples in the 1940s. Marriage was not all work and responsibility. Couples made time to enjoy each other's company on dance floors where blues and early rhythm and blues played from jukeboxes or live bands. The way a husband held his wife while dancing, the way she followed his lead, reflected the intimacy and partnership of their marriage. These nights out reminded couples why they had fallen in love in the first place. Dancing required closeness, eye contact, and moving together in rhythm, all things that strengthen the physical and emotional connection between spouses. Friends and neighbors who saw couples dancing well together knew those marriages were healthy. The juke joint might have been a simple wooden building, but inside it, couples found joy and recreation that balanced the hard work of daily life. For Black marriages in the 1940s, dancing together was not frivolous. It was necessary. Wives ironing their husbands' clothes with pride every night was a ritual that demonstrated love through action in Black homes during the 1940s. After the dinner dishes were washed and the children were in bed, wives would set up the ironing board and press their husbands' work clothes for the next day. The iron heated on the stove and the smell of clean cotton and starch filled the kitchen. This was not drudgery. It was devotion made visible. A man who left the house in crisp, well-pressed clothes carried his wife's care with him all day. The creases in his pants and the smooth collar of his shirt told the world that someone at home loved him enough to do this work every single night. Husbands noticed and appreciated this effort, even if they did not always say so. The nightly ironing was intimate in its own way, a wife preparing her husband to face a world that would judge him partly by his appearance. For Black men navigating racism and limited opportunity, looking sharp mattered, and their wives made sure they did. The family Bible that recorded marriages, births, and deaths was the most sacred book in Black homes during the 1940s. This large leather-bound Bible sat in a place of honor, and its pages held more than scripture. In the front or the back, families recorded every significant event, the date a couple married, the names and birth dates of children, and the deaths of loved ones. The Bible became a living document of family history, passed from generation to generation. Couples who married had their names written in that Bible by parents or grandparents, their union officially documented alongside ancestors who came before. Children learned their family history by reading those handwritten entries. The Bible was brought out for family devotions and for swearing oaths that could not be broken. For Black families whose history had been erased by slavery, this Bible was proof that they existed, that they mattered, and that their marriages were part of something eternal. Grandmothers teaching granddaughters the secrets of keeping a man was a tradition that passed wisdom across generations in Black families during the 1940s. These conversations happened in kitchens while cooking, on porches while shelling peas, and in quiet moments when granddaughters were old enough to understand. They spoke plainly about what made marriages last, sharing lessons learned through decades of experience. They taught about respect, about knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, and about keeping yourself attractive for your husband. The advice was practical, covering everything from cooking his favorite meals to handling disagreements without destroying his pride. Granddaughters listened carefully because they knew this wisdom could not be found in books. These grandmothers had stayed married for 40, 50, even 60 years, and their knowledge was proven by their own enduring unions. The secrets they shared were treasures passed down like heirlooms, equipping young women for marriages that would last. Couples growing old together on the same front porch where they had courted was the beautiful ending that many Black marriages in the 1940s achieved. The young man who had once sat nervously asking permission to court now sat there as an old man, his wife beside him after decades of life together. They had raised children on that porch, watched grandchildren play, and buried loved ones along the way. The porch had witnessed their entire love story, from first shy conversations to comfortable silences that needed no words. Neighbors who passed by saw a living testament to commitment. The couple might hold hands the way they had when courting, or simply sit close enough that their shoulders touched. Everything they had built, every sacrifice, and every joy was represented in those two rocking chairs side by side. For Black couples who had survived poverty, racism, and loss, growing old together was the ultimate victory, proving their love had been worth fighting for. The promise to stay together until death, kept without question, was the foundation upon which Black marriages in the 1940s were built. When couples spoke those vows before God and their community, they meant every word. Divorce was rare not because it was impossible, but because it was unthinkable. Couples worked through problems that would end modern marriages. Because leaving simply was not an option they allowed themselves to consider. This commitment was not blind stubbornness. It was a deep understanding that marriage was bigger than momentary unhappiness. The promise created security that allowed love to deepen over decades. Children grew up knowing their parents would always be together, and that stability shaped their own expectations. When one spouse finally passed, the other would say they had kept their promise, their voice filled with grief but also pride. The marriages that lasted forever did so because both husband and wife decided every day that the vow they made would be the vow they kept until their very last breath. Which of these marriage secrets resonated with you? Drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe to keep these stories alive.